You're listening to Theater in College Hoops. I'm Subi. Alongside me is Taylor Dammel. We're brought to you by Dash Radio and the Barn Burner Podcast Network. Go subscribe on whichever device you use. I actually just realized I don't have a random name. Literally the first one that comes to your mind, let me know. But it should be random.
Connor Frankamp.
Big Ten.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that Big Ten? Oh, yeah. He's Big 12.
He was Kansas.
Oh, yeah. Shit. Jared Uthoff.
That's awesome, actually. Okay. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. All right. You're listening to Theater in College Hoops. I'm Subi. Alongside me is Taylor Dammel. We're brought to you by Dash Radio and the Barn Burner Podcast Network. Go subscribe on whichever device you use. I actually heard Jared Uthoff. Absolute rail. So skinny.
There's nothing wrong with a skinny white guy, first off. Some people, especially women, have a preference for skinny white guys, as far as I know, personal experience.
Well, I'm glad that you spoke up because I will be repping a player later in my starting five with a huge ass, and that might actually be a spoiler alert. So if you're repping skinny white guys, I'm going to be repping guys with big asses. But Jared Uthoff, regardless, forward for Iowa, correct?
Correct.
Bald head. Yeah, I mean, he was typecast. He was perfect for Iowa. But Jared Uthoff subscribes, so you should as well. Check out the website at thebarnburner.com. That's the-barnburner.com. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at CBB Theater. You should also follow me at Subi232 to find out where the Theat is, and Taylor at Taylor Dammel. We're sponsored by Blue Note, artfully crafted small batch bourbon distilled in Memphis and honoring the Memphis Blues. Be noteworthy, Memphis. Taylor, how's the move, man?
Just awesome. Always good. Moving is always fun. Moving about 1.5 miles down the street. Actually, let's use this. Is this a safe place to vent about moving?
Yes.
Okay.
TICH is for this is the theater. This is the open stage. If you want a soliloquy, do it. What's wrong?
Do you ever just wish that your girlfriend wasn't involved in the move with you and you could just ship everything over to the other house without having to like neatly pack it up and package it? Or is that just me?
I'm assuming that's a rhetorical question because I'd be lost without when we moved from Phoenix, dude. I didn't coordinate one thing. I didn't put anything on offer up. I didn't do shit.
Well, that's a cross country move. That needs to be some kind of you need to actually pack things up and whatever. We're moving 1 mile down the street. We don't need to carefully wrap every single plate. Let's just throw it in there and hold it on the way over to the house, and in 15 minutes we'll be back. That's
the type of mentality, though, that I feel like you need, right? So that's the exact same mentality that has spruced up a house, that has replaced, I don't know, just some raggedy, shitty towel with an actual bath towel or a hand towel. You can't split it up. You have to take into account, you have to take with you we need to wrap every single plate up because it comes with I'm going to make this bathroom look good. Does that make sense?
True. It's I was going to say the yin to the yang, but I think it would be because this is a college basketball podcast, the pick to the roll of the move. Sometimes you need a pick. Is the person who's packing everything up carefully, are they the pick or are they the roll?
Well, that's a good question.
I think the person who wraps everything up comfortably is the roll because they're the finisher.
Mm-hmm. Well, but right? Who's responsible for actually transporting
they're also the
it?
Pick. They're also the pick, though, too. God, this is tough.
If it's between us right now, right? Let's say I pack and wrap everything up, and it's your job to transport it to our destination safely.
That's got to be the role then,
right?
Yeah. Okay, so maybe Danielle, my girlfriend, is the pick. She's the person who's putting this all together, setting up, or she's the instance represented by a person who's setting up the play, and then I'm just rolling to the new house to set it up.
So here's what we need to do. Two things. One, we need to call upon Bill Raftery because I feel like he would be, I don't know why, he was the number one name that popped into my head that could help us out with this dilemma. But number two, we need to workshop a term for whenever we see a pick and roll this upcoming season and include something with moving, packing the dishes. Again, this is a workshop. We may not ever get around to it. I'm just spitballing here.
And let's hope that one of our listeners on Twitter can help us out with this. I'm needing a better analogy, or at least a better interpretation of this analogy for my current situation. Maybe the pick and pop would have been a better one. Maybe a backdoor cut. Shout out to the Backdoor Cut podcast here on the Barn Burner Podcast Network. I don't know. I guess I could have thought about that a little more, but I was just kind of venting. But I think pick and roll, we could work with something off that. So, but yeah, moving, we found a little decent spot over there on the canal. Beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona. 69 degrees today.
Nice.
Thank you. And we're deep. I got a hoodie on. We're deep in fall weather right now. Perfect time to move. The first time in 11 years of living in Arizona that I didn't move in the dead heat of early August.
Well, you finally learned your lesson.
Yeah, right. Or I just finally continued to convince landlords to let me stay longer and longer and longer and longer so that I could actually wait and get into more comfortable time of year to move.
It is true that we have approached an age now where we should probably stop moving and renting every 2 seconds, right? We should probably be owning a home, and if not, staying in a particular place for more than just a year. So,
well, I have been at this house for 5 or 6 years, so at least
that's
I got
a win.
Point down. Yeah,
that's a huge win.
Subi, I did have to take your artwork off the wall today, and I know that's an emotional moment for both of us. I did have a tear in my eye when I took down your wine and paint art off the wall of your former bedroom. So that was a pretty emotional moment for me.
I shed a thug tear, man. I'll tell you what. This is, for those listening, it's not real art, actually. It is one of those paintings that you paint during a paint and sip class. I think I just set the record for number of times saying paint in one sentence. But like when you're at one of those paint and sip classes, that's what he's referring to. And I went to like 10 of those at my former employer because that was their quote unquote work offsite. I mean, after 2, you kind of get the point. But at least we drew completely something different. But that's why Taylor had to take those down. There was probably like 4, 5, 3. Okay.
Now, and can I add something to that? This is not going to be the last time I bring up a painter here today on this podcast.
I guess we're both spoiling shit now. But that makes me happy because he is not my coach of the year, which I'm assuming, which is where
maybe
you're
I'm not.
going with
Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. We'll see. You'll just have to continue to listen to find out.
All right. So the Big Ten, that is a nice teaser into our preview today. Great episode for you ahead. The Big Ten we will be previewing. And Taylor, you were in Kansas last weekend, and
Correct.
Appropriately, we discussed the Big 12. I currently live in Big Ten country here in Chicago, and I know people are getting fired up with basketball season coming around. One of the greatest basketball cities in the entire country. Bulls are back. They just lost a heartbreaker, so par for the course. Everyone's really back into the basketball season. DePaul had a preseason game yesterday, or an exhibition game, but I think a lot of people are very excited for Big Ten basketball because Chicago is really a melting pot, and it's a melting pot of different colleges. You walk outside, you see sweaters of Iowa, you see sweaters of Indiana, clearly the most tradition-rich team in the entire conference. You see sweaters for Ohio State, for Michigan, and of course for the home state, Illinois. And it's funny because we were talking about this prior to getting on the air. The Big Ten is one of the most intriguing, interesting conferences with a variety of really good players, a variety of big-time coaches, names that are poised to break out, poised to get to a Final Four, and poised to potentially win a national title. So there's a lot of tiers here in the Big Ten. And just a quick recap about what they did last year. This was one of the best years a conference could ever have, really, outside of the ACC. That one year where they got like every single team in the tournament. I think we know what I'm talking about. But last year, the Big Ten had 8 teams go to the tournament. Michigan State being the lone representative in the Final Four. in the first round, those teams went 7-1. That's about as good as you can expect a conference to do on the whole, and then transfer that into the tournament. Now, of course, there is that stigma of not having won since Michigan State's last title, which was in 2000, with Izzo, Mateen Cleaves, right, Mo Pete. So the Big Ten as a whole is kind of struggling with a crisis that the Pac-12 is as well, which hasn't won a title since, what is it, Arizona, right?
97.
97, which for
it's
us,
wild, by the way.
It's
Both
crazy.
of those stats are wild because the Pac-12, I think you could say, it's down more often than any other conference. The Big Ten is rarely down, because that would mean that like Michigan State and the Ohio State and Michigan, all these kind of more, not blue blood, Michigan State's a blue blood, but high level universities and athletic programs would all have to have down years at the same time. So it's just interesting that there's a lot of Final Fours in there over the last 19 years, but there's no rings, there's no net. And that's it's pretty crazy. It's not super surprising with the Pac-12, because you think, okay, that's almost, in the last 20 years, it's almost totally up to Arizona, UCLA, and then Oregon that one year. Maybe Washington sprinkled in there. In the Big Ten, you could look at maybe 6 or 7 schools and go, they've been right there in a couple times. So yeah, really interesting. It'd be interesting to go back and look, and I wish you'd have brought this up before the show. Share your notes, because we could have gone and looked and seen how many times they've lost in the title game in the last 20 years.
Well, I can already think of 3 out the top of my head. Michigan twice, and then Michigan State against Carolina in 2009. Wisconsin's 4. See, this proves to be a lot better than just being prepped. Illinois against Carolina. Mm-hmm. So that's 5.
That's already 20%, 25% of the last 20 years.
I was going to say more recently, the Big Ten is going to look at the state of Michigan and be like, what the hell, guys?
Yeah. Right.
Well, so that, if we look at it title by title, let's start with Illinois versus Carolina. I think they were simply outmatched. Both the Illinois Carolina game and the Michigan State Carolina game, which followed, I think, 5 years later, Carolina was just better.
Game was over before it started, pretty much.
Those were all-time Carolina teams, if you think about it. And I remember the 2009 team; they went wire to wire, number 1 team all year.
Did you get Ohio State in there?
No, against Florida.
So there's 6, yeah. So yeah, you're talking about essentially one of every 3 years. The last 3 years, the Big Ten, or one in every 3 years over the last 18, 19 years, a Big Ten school has lost in the championship game.
That's crazy. That is wild.
That is hard-hitting Big J journalism here, research here at College Basketball Theater.
Look, we like to
college basketball.
We like to try and pay as much attention to every single conference as possible, but to be quite honest, we're not on the Rothstein level. We're not on like a Seth Davis. We're not on a Andy Katz type level. So the fact that we've just discovered this right now is
don't give
crazy.
Andy Katz that much credit.
Okay, fine. Fuck Andy Katz.
Yeah, okay.
But like the fact that we just unraveled this right now, it's very eye-opening to me that Ohio State lost to Florida, which was an admirable game. I mean, Greg Oden was hurt, and you're going up against what some consider the greatest team of all time in college basketball. And then you've got, who did we say? We said
Michigan
twice. I mean, that Gonzaga game, not Gonzaga, excuse me, that Villanova game was just, they were never going to win. That was another great team with DiVincenzo going insane. The Louisville game, that one probably hurts because they had Trey Burke, and just they had a lot of good players on that team, and that was a battle. And I remember that Trey Burke block was kind of the turning point because they called it I think they called a foul on it,
and it was clean.
So Michigan's got a split right there. One that they could have won. Villanova, you weren't really going to win that game,
right?
So Ohio State, tough to go up against that Florida team. Fine. Wisconsin, you're going up against a Duke team, which is always going to be difficult. But that Wisconsin team also was 2 days removed from beating Kentucky
undefeated Kentucky, right?
Exactly. So that could have been a missed opportunity, and it's got to hurt even more because Grayson Allen came out of nowhere, and before he acted up like a dickhead, was like everyone who hates Wisconsin's savior. And then was
that the worst game of our lifetime?
Yeah, 100%. It was a lose-lose.
Yeah, just awful. I just wanted to throw myself into traffic, no matter who won that game.
Coach K with another title, or Bo Ryan and that Wisconsin team that's beaten us 2 years in a row in the Elite Eight with a title.
Ugh.
That's why I was honestly like, just give it to Coach K, because this will just be another. Like, I feel like Duke fans even forget that they beat Wisconsin in that title game.
Right.
It was just kind of a nondescript title, but if Wisconsin had won, we wouldn't hear the end of it.
Hold on, I'm interrupting you. We're forgetting about Indiana losing to Maryland in 2002 as well.
Yeah, that was within the past 20 years.
So that's 7.
Holy shit.
In the national title game in the last 19 years.
Do you think the Big Ten will count that, though, because Maryland's not part of the Big Ten? I mean, I'd give them a bone somehow.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's funny, obviously, because, I guess they would have gotten that as a win. But still, that's 2 teams, I guess you could say, that were from the Big Ten were in the final. Yeah, that is just – I mean, that is wild.
And then Michigan State getting their doors blown off basically in their own backyard in Detroit, but no one's gonna call them out on that, because that Carolina team was incredible.
And that's not even counting. Let's see. I'm doing
the Final Fours.
Let's do it live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good Lord. 6. Oh, man. 7 other Final Four appearances in that time, too. That are teams that are separate from the ones that lost in the title game.
Sheesh.
So that's 14 Final Four appearances and 7 national championship losses for the Big Ten in the last 20 years, or since their last title.
We already have our hugs, but I think I might do a quick, early show hug for the Big Ten. I had no idea how inept they were when it came down to clutch basketball. At least Pac-12 doesn't really get there. You could argue that those early 2000s UCLA teams with Russ, Ben Howland, and Kevin Love going to the Final Four every single year, but damn, that is a widespread plague, I feel like, that the Big Ten is still suffering from.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, you realize this stuff, but then until you actually talk about it, that is crazy that they've. I mean, you could be talking about with things just, and those games are coin flips. A couple blowouts in there, don't get me wrong, but generally once you get to the Elite Eight, you would say that every game from there is pretty much a coin flip, because you're talking about either the 8 best teams in the country, or the 7 best teams in the country and the hottest team in the country, like a South Carolina a couple of years ago. But it could have been, you might be talking about the most dominant stretch of a conference, even above anything the ACC's done in college basketball history, outside of, UCLA, but I don't even, whatever. John Wooden,
right?
Whatever. But at least of the modern area, that is wild to say that. So 14 Final Four appearances in the last 19 years for a conference is absurd. Wow.
And it's not to say that they haven't had some of their fortune on the way to those title games, right? If we remember, Michigan ended up playing Villanova, but who did they play in the Final Four to get to Villanova? And it was a great story, but they played Loyola Chicago, right? Let's think about that. But then even before that, I think in the first round, maybe the second round, they played Houston. And I think it was Jordan Poole who hit the game-winning crazy shot in from behind the arc on the right-hand side. So
yeah, I mean,
that is crazy though.
You need good fortune to make even Loyola Chicago's in Big Ten country, so they even felt the vibe on that.
Yeah, I suppose they did. But we're looking ahead now. It's going to be an exciting year in the Big Ten. A lot of people would say, including myself, that the best team in the entire country resides in the Big Ten, that the best player potentially in the entire country resides in the Big Ten. But we'll start first with coach, and you alluded to him a little bit earlier, but who's your coach of the year in the Big Ten?
I'm going with Matt Painter again from Purdue. This would be his 5th Coach of the Year award in the Big Ten. And I think that why Painter is going to win it this year is I think he has built one of the most underrated programs in the country. Purdue has the most Big Ten titles. Let's all remember that, by the way. They have the most Big Ten regular season titles of any school in the Big Ten. They won the Big Ten last year. And what I think continues to happen is we look at Purdue over and over again and go, they lost a lot last year. But they've built such a program that is unnecessary of having big-time recruits that are just continually successful. As we all probably forget, or the casual fan forgets, Purdue won the Big Ten last year. And I think that they're going to have another successful season this year just simply because they have an old team, a big old team this year. They got Matt Harms.
Is Robbie Hummel still there?
Yeah, right, on his 14th ACL. They every one of their starting lineup, except for one, is going to be a red shirt. So they're going to have 2 redshirt sophomores, a redshirt junior, a redshirt senior who's a transfer in Jihad Proctor, and a junior. And when you have that kind of returning talent every year, whether it's high-end talent or not, you just have that kind of continuity in college basketball usually equals wins, because it's going to, well, there's so many newcomers obviously in and out of college basketball every year, but even more so in the current times we live in because of one and done type of recruits and whatnot. But a school like Purdue just keeps chugging. That was an unintentional train pun right there. But they just keep rolling along. And I think Matt Painter, again, is going to be right up there for the Coach of the Year. I think that they're going to have a little run in the tournament like they seem to always do. And, you know, a good stat I saw about them today is, I don't know how, if you love Ken Palm or not, or if you even like any, you know, that Ken Palm type of stuff. But they finished in the top 10 in Ken Palm rankings 3 of the last 4 years. And that is just a sign, if nothing else, of just continuity. And Matt Painter has produced, or has now built, one of the most consistent programs in the country.
Yeah, Matt Painter is a fantastic coach. I do love Matt Painter, and I think he's
underrated somehow
still. Yeah, I think he's perfect for those Purdue expectations. I don't think Purdue really has a Final Four type expectations, national championship type expectations, but the run that he went on last year was exactly what they're looking for. And I think he avenged himself for the previous few years where they kind of just fizzled out in the first round of the tournament, right, against maybe some mid-major teams and maybe just choking a little bit, because Purdue has had some pretty bad luck. We have a good friend, Jonas, who went to Purdue, and it seems as if they share some of the same bad luck that Arizona can in the tournament. But Matt Painter and Purdue, if you think about it as a fan, obviously you want to win as many games and win titles, but it's tough. We've said it a million times on this show that winning a title in college basketball it can be a crapshoot. Like we said, Loyola Chicago, South Carolina, those 2 teams were in Final Fours very recently. But if you're a Purdue fan, you have to feel very fortunate that basically for the past 30 plus some odd years, I don't know the exact timing of it, you've had Gene Katie and Matt Painter as your head coach. Mm-hmm. It doesn't get more stable than that. And you're not going to get for sure a tournament berth every single year. I mean, I'm sure Purdue's making a solid case for number of tournament berths in a row. So paint crew, Matt Painter, I do love him, and I like what he's obviously done at Purdue. He's solidified. So you know what? He's got an absolute stranglehold on the state of Indiana in terms of basketball. He is light years better than Indiana and Butler and Notre Dame.
So I would say that Matt Painter isn't even going to need to win the conference this year to win Coach of the Year, because I think a lot of media people will see that they lost Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein and that that's a lot to lose, but it's maybe a lot to lose more from a outside looking in. Don't get me wrong; those guys they're studs, but Matt Painter probably knows the talent that he has available to him, and so. But I think the media will look and be like, "Oh my God, they lost Carson Edwards, they lost Klein, Carson Edwards, future Steph Curry, Boston Celtic."
That's basically. So we talk about expectations. Elite Eight or so is Matt Painter's expectations. My expectations for Carson Edwards are Steph Curry. So
yeah, right, if not better.
Exactly.
So, right. So I think I don't even think they need to win the conference for Matt Painter to win the Coach of the Year, because I think you'll look, if Michigan State wins the conference, is Izzo going to get Coach of the Year? Izzo hasn't won Coach of the Year since 2010, and that is just a shame, because this is what happens. The Coach of the Year award is kind of an arbitrary award, really, when it comes to the Player of the Year award. Is generally, this guy was the best player in the conference, because obviously they're only going to be there for a couple of years, so it's not like they're going to win it 10 times in a row. But you could give this award to Izzo almost every single year. And as we've previously discussed, Izzo always likes to sneak a little loss in there early, and I think people just kind of fall off the wagon. And then by the time that the voting is done for Coach of the Year, Izzo's back to another Final Four, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, shit,
he's awesome.
He's still Tom Izzo." And so that's really my reason for not going with Izzo, is because he's got the expected maybe national player of the year on his roster this year. They are like the not unanimous number one team in the country, but they certainly are the consensus number one team in the country. So I think that that's the reason that he won't win the Coach of the Year. But that's completely debatable, because say if they go like something like 30-1 before the tournament, something like that, then you kind of have to give him Coach of the Year. But it's all about what the interpretation of how good they are preseason to what the finish is. Because let's say they don't win the conference, then Izzo's definitely not winning Coach of the Year if they don't win the conference, because the expectation was for them to win the conference and go to the Final Four. They have Final Four or bust expectation this year.
Exactly. I feel like almost every single conference, with the exception of maybe the Pac-12 and the ACC, has a coach that is expected to win a national title. And if they steamroll their way to a conference title, conference tournament title, it still won't mean anything, right? Until you get to a Final Four and win the national title. And those guys are Tom Izzo, Bill Self, John Calipari. And so you look at a team like Bill Self's, you look at Kansas, a program like Kansas, you look at a program like Michigan State, they're never going to go that 30-1. It just won't happen, right? They're prone to losing some of those games. And we've said Michigan State, they'll probably lose game 1, and they might lose game 2 or 3. Maybe not in a row, but they will lose game 1. I wouldn't be shocked at all. And then you look at a team like Kansas, they're known to drop a couple games as well. Maybe not in the Big 12 regular season, but out of conference. A team like Kentucky, now if they go 30-1, which they literally did, then Coach Cal, I could see getting Coach of the Year, things like that. But Kentucky's a team that is built and that has shown that they can go an entire season without losing a game up until maybe the Final Four. These other two teams, they're going to be great, and they're probably not going to fall outside of the top 5, but you just can't see them losing more than, or you can't see them only losing like 0 games. Not going to happen.
Right. So that's why I have Painter as my Coach of the Year.
Real quick, I wanted to circle back actually to a point that you made, a really good point that you made about the talent that we see from Purdue leaving, and it doesn't seem to really matter because he just keeps winning. And that's so true, because that talent was never necessarily great to begin with. I think he's done a great job of developing guys like Caleb Swanigan.
Swanigan was a big time recruit. He's one of the, right.
But he was fat as hell.
Thick. He was thick. Okay, he was thick.
I might say he was fat as hell, but he's in great shape now, and he had a pro career. I don't know. He might be in the G League, but regardless, Swanigan left. They kept winning. Who was their huge freak? Isaac something. Isaac Haas. Thank you.
It was Haas and Harms for.
Yeah, it's impossible for me to keep those two straight because they're like part of the Aryan Brotherhood together. Like
all white people. All white people look the same, Suey.
Blonde hair. I mean, those two actually do look the same. They're like 7 feet in blonde hair. But Haas, he left. Important part of the team. Nobody really heard of Carson Edwards a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
He's gone. Ryan Klein, one of the greatest shooters in their program's history. Dakota Mathias, another really good shooter. These are names that, you're right, have come and gone, but the train keeps rolling.
You know, if you were a really good editor at these podcasts, you would put in a choo-choo sound right there.
Fuck it. Is that a challenge?
It might be. It might be. Yeah.
I'll give you a train.
See. Okay.
You want a train? I'll give you a train.
Okay. I love it. Now this is next level. Now we're just improving on a weekly basis here with our abilities. I love this. I love it. It's a lot like college basketball. You know, you start with some talent, but in the beginning, but you got to still figure out how to make it grow as we roll along. Another train pun, and that's what we're looking at right here. So love that. So do you want coach of the year or player of the year or winner of the conference?
Let's start with player of the year.
So I tried my damnedest to convince myself to pick someone else. And I almost wanted to go with Lamar Stevens from Penn State, who is just a stud, averaged 20 and 8 and 2 last year on a not so great Penn State team. Penn State might have a tournament team this year, though. Maybe there's a lot of teams at the bottom of this conference that have an opportunity to make the tournament. But I couldn't go away from Cassius Winston. And he's like the unanimous or the consensus player of the year in the country. He's gonna lead this Michigan State team to what I expect to be at least a Final Four. And I really wanted to find a way to not pick him. But it's just you're almost just being a contrarian if you don't, which I am more often than not, kind of a contrarian when it comes to these type of picks. But I just couldn't be in this situation. It almost goes without saying as the why. He is literally just the best player in the country. He's the best guard on the best team in the country. He was a unanimous preseason player of the year for the Big Ten pick by the media. I mean, it's almost too Tom Izzo to have such a stud senior guard to lead this Michigan State team. And it's almost because Langford is hurt that pushed me over the top to not even be able to go contrarian, because now he's going to, in the first half of the season, he's going to have to pick up that load too. Along with, freshman Rocket Watts on that team is probably going to have a little bit of that load as well. And then their forward, Xavier Tillman, will have to step up and fill that role. Not the same exact role, but maybe get a couple more buckets for them because Langford's out. But that's still mostly going to fall on Cassius Winston. And my notes literally say Cassius Winston, duh. I mean, it's hard to figure out a way not to. Although if there was going to pick two other guys, it would be Anthony Cowan from Maryland and then Lamar Stevens from Penn State. I think more people are going to understand how good Anthony Cowan is this year. Another senior guard from Maryland there. But because Maryland's going to be good, and Lamar Stevens, Penn State team's not going to be great. They might not even make the tournament. They are going to be a potential tournament team, but Cassius Winston just couldn't pass him up.
Yeah, so let's start with Lamar Stevens here first and foremost. I think he is great, but he kind of has that Anthony Edwards scenario where not only is your team bad and you won't make the tournament, but it's not like you're even a basketball school, right?
Yeah,
so nobody cares about Penn State. Penn State basketball is probably, in my opinion, along with Rutgers, the most irrelevant basketball team in the conference. You could say the same about Georgia and the SEC. They are clear-cut football schools that nobody cares about when it comes to basketball. So that's working against Lamar. In terms of Anthony Cowan, yeah, I was considering him as well, and I still may have him, but Mark Turgeon just sucks.
He's just awful.
and we'll get to that when we discuss our coaches of the year, but I just feel like Mark Turgeon can't have nice things, and he's gonna do something with Anthony Cowan that I'm afraid of. But I like the Cassius pick. My only concern is because of the amount of experience that Cassius has, and he's been to a Final Four. Is he going to be looking ahead to the postseason already and just be completely over the regular season? So I suppose I'll ask you that.
It's almost like a load management thing in the NBA, right? Where it's like, okay, do we even need to win it? Does it matter if we win the conference or not? And that's something that I think Michigan State's potentially going to struggle with as a whole without Langford. But that's also what makes someone like Cassius Winston, a senior, so important, to keep the team together, say, hey, this is important. These are our goals. And that's also why having someone like Bill Self Tom Izzo is important. But I can 100% see that where it's like, we're at Rutgers on a Tuesday night. Do I need to have 23, 9, and 4 tonight? No. I can defer. I can kick it to these other guys. Rocket Watts can play 15 minutes tonight, and we can play together. These learning type of experience that you might need the younger guys on the team to have. And so I could see Cassius Winston not deferring, but maybe not. And this is not an indictment on Cassius Winston's abilities or mindset or anything like that at all, because I think he's one of the best competitors in the country as well. But I could certainly see them having okay, what's the big picture here versus like what's the day-to-day, game-to-game important situations that we have to deal with. I could see them thinking to themselves, well, we just need to get to the tournament. Then none of this shit matters. Rutgers on a Tuesday night doesn't matter. So what? We lose and we fall to the number 6 team in the country, and then we win 3 more games and we're back to number 2 or 1 again. Yeah, I think that's a very low likelihood, but I could see that would be the only potential reason to not maybe pick a Cassius Winston.
But on the flip side, since we're shitting on Mark Turgeon in Maryland, I feel like that's a scenario where Mark Turgeon would say, no, we need to win the Big Ten. Every single game matters. And he potentially mishandles Anthony Cowan, or Anthony Cowan tries to do a little bit too much because he hasn't had that taste of winning a Big Ten title like Cassius has. He hasn't been to a Final Four. So I can just see how that might wear out a Maryland team and Anthony Cowan team, because if Maryland goes into Rutgers and Michigan State goes into Rutgers, again, this is all hypothetical. I don't know what their schedules are, but if those two teams go into Rutgers, I can guarantee you Turgeon is going to be fucking balls to the wall when it may not be necessary, especially with a good Maryland team. If, of course, Maryland plays like a top 10 team, which they're ranked.
Right. Yeah, so I can understand that a little bit. Oh, it's really funny? They don't even play Rutgers. Oh, no, they do. That's their first game of the year. Their first game of the Big Ten season is December 8th against
Michigan State?
Against Rutgers at home. Okay, poor example. Let me pick a better.
When do they play Penn State? How about that?
Yeah, there we go.
When do they play Minnesota?
Yeah. Hey, you don't believe in Patino? They play Minnesota. They play Minnesota at the Barn on January 26th. Oh yeah, it's
pretty late conference season.
Yeah, Sunday evening. Minnesota will be trying to get over a Vikings loss in the playoffs. I could see how maybe they would show up a little bit more for that game, and Michigan State maybe just lets one slip. So
there we go, Patino.
Yeah, right. So let's see. So you want my winner of the conference now?
Yep.
Turn your mic or turn your ears up. The Boilermakers do it again.
Wow, if true.
And there's actually some method to this madness here. Okay. Let's start with the 4 teams, in my opinion, or 3 other teams, that have any shot at winning this conference. There's a lot of good teams in this conference, but I think only 3 of them really have an opportunity to win the conference outside of Purdue. One of them is Ohio State. They're probably the 3rd best team in the conference, or 4th from a national perspective. I just don't think they have enough talent. And I think Holtman is one of the best coaches in the country, But there's another classic example of basketball football school situation.
I wouldn't put Ohio State in the Georgia and Penn State though. Ohio State has a little bit more.
No.
I see where you're coming from though.
They have a really nice roster with the Wesson Bros. They're sick. When they have Kyle Young in the game, they have a 3-man rotation in the back or in the front court. That is great. That's their best lineup is from an efficiency standpoint is with the Wessons and Kyle Young in the game. But I just don't see everything I want from this Ohio State team to say they're going to win the conference. I think they're going to be like a 3 seed or 4 seed. I think they're going to be really, really good. But I just don't see the consistency that I get from Matt Painter. Holtman's still an awesome coach, and I think they have and the Wesson Bros are dope. And they have a really important transfer, CJ Walker from Florida State as well, who should be a big time impact player. But let me move to Maryland. Mark Turgeon is not winning this conference, so just throw that out the window.
It's so funny. Like I feel like we're both on the same page about Turgeon, and even Maryland being in the Big Ten. Just go back to the ACC, man. Then I may start picking you to win conference titles.
So, but I will say Maryland is potentially going to be the second best team in this conference, and they have the talent and they have the senior leadership in Anthony Cowan Jr. to really make a lot of noise in the conference and nationally. But let me tell you why Purdue is going to win this conference. Purdue has an awesome schedule.
Awesome as an easy.
They only play Michigan State, Ohio State, and Maryland once each. And that's it.
Yeah.
And so that alone, with other things, if you take everything else being equal, that's a really fortunate schedule for them. And so, they play Northwestern twice. They play Nebraska twice. They play Rutgers twice. They play Minnesota twice. So they have, they only play Minnesota once, excuse me. But they play Iowa twice, my bad. But from a top end team perspective, they only have to play the other 4 best teams in the conference one time. And I think that they're going to be good enough and consistent enough and old enough to not be shook by these road games. And even, they get Michigan State at home early in the year, in January 12th. Langford might not even be back by then. And if he is, that's going to be a classic game where they announce that Langford's coming back for it, and they don't know how to work him into the offense yet, and they lose on the road at Purdue, and West Lafayette goes wild. So I think they're going to win the conference just because of that. You have to look and see, because if we look at the schedules here, no team is going to go undefeated, even though we kind of referenced that earlier. So let's say Michigan State loses 2 games this year, right? Just as an example. If one of those games is to Purdue, they might lose the tiebreaker, because I don't see a whole lot of losses on Purdue's schedule just simply because of the good fortune that their schedule is. So that's why I'm going to pick Purdue as the regular season winner. I'm not saying they're the best team in the conference, because as we often see, we just talked about in the Big 12, we often see that sometimes the best team isn't the team that actually wins the regular season. Working Langford back might take a game or 3, and Purdue's schedule is really easy, or at least really easy from a top-end perspective. So that's why I'm picking my boys. It's West Lafayette, the Boilermakers, Drew Brees, stand up, Purdue, winner of the 2020 Big Ten regular season title.
If you have Maryland at 2, I don't know. Did I hear that correctly, or they have the potential to be the second best?
Right. They have the potential. So Michigan State's finishing second.
So that's what I was going to ask. I was like, remember what I just said. Tiebreak.
I said that the best team in the conference isn't necessarily who's winning the conference. So Michigan State is easily, far and away, the best team in this conference. But that doesn't mean that they're going to win the regular season title, simply because how the schedule lines up and when Langford is going to come back and have to be worked in for a couple of games.
I agree. You could say that till you're blue in the face, but if you tell someone Michigan State's going to be number 3 finishing in the conference,
no, number
right?
two,
but even so, but like, let's say if you did, because I'm sure there are some people who might think Michigan State finishes 3, their heads would explode, right? Despite the fact, your reasoning is that the team that wins isn't necessarily the best team. If you on paper put down, again, hypothetical, which you're not doing, Michigan State at 3, that's pretty crazy, right? It's crazy to say here. How about this? Let me phrase it like this: if you tell someone my Big Ten winner is not one of the 2 teams that are ranked in the top 10, people might call you crazy.
Right. So, but my specific reasoning more than anything else is that if Michigan State had this same schedule, then I'd say maybe they'd go undefeated. Right. It simply comes down to that. Whereas Purdue just had the really good fortune of not having to play the 3 best teams outside of them in the conference more than once. With what did we figure that out? Was that 1 or 2 of them is at home?
I mean, schedule matters. You're absolutely right.
Well, especially in the Big Ten that has 47 schools now. They don't have an equal schedule to like the Big 12 has only 10 teams. They all play each other twice. It's a simple, easy way to figure it out. Right. Yep. So if you say the reason that this team is winning the Big 12, it's because they're beating all of the same teams. In the Big 10, that's not how it works. So that is the specific reason more than anything else why I'm picking Purdue. And that's why I go back to Painter being one of the, if not the most consistent coach outside of Izzo in the conference, with one of the most consistent programs in the conference. That continuity is why these games, beating a lesser opponent, even if it's on the road, that's where you need an old team, a big team, a classic Big Ten, old, sizable team playing on the road in mid-February. That's I'm going with Purdue simply because they're just going to be slightly better than almost all of the teams they play on the road, and at home they're going to just be enough better than everyone they play at home. And if they sneak, this whole thing will be determined if, let's see, on January 18th they play at Maryland. On January 20th, we'll do a podcast, and I will tell you, because they play Michigan State and Maryland back-to-back games, January 12th and January 18th. On January 19th or 20th, we'll be able to pretty much determine whether this prediction was right or wrong. Yeah. If they lose those 2 games, right, then I'm an idiot. If they win those 2 games, then we're really out here though. So yeah, that'll be some. Put it on your calendar, someone. Well, that week is going to be the exact determining factor of whether they're going to win this conference or not.
I will say, because Purdue does have a penchant for dropping big games, that very well may occur, but they also have a penchant for getting upset, and that's kind of been shed the past couple of years. But don't overlook the other games that they obviously have to play. But I understand what you're saying. Those are the 2 biggest ones because
they're going to need the tiebreaker. They're going to need the tiebreaker. Right.
But if they're not playing that well and then miraculously split those 2, I'm still going to be like, well, I don't think Purdue's going to win the Big Ten, because they got to, basically what I'm saying is they got to take care of business outside of those 2 games as well.
Right. Well, they're fortunate because they start Big Ten season off with Northwestern and Nebraska.
Yeah.
And then Minnesota and Illinois. And then it's Michigan, Michigan State, Maryland. So that stretch is really they should be a pretty, I don't want to say pretty easy, but they should be 4-0 heading into that Michigan, Michigan State, Maryland stretch. If they come out of that even 6-1, they're going to be right there, because then their tough games are done.
Yeah.
They play Ohio State one more time at Ohio State later on, and that's the 4th best team in the conference, and then that's it. So obviously, yeah, just like any really, really good conference like this is, and this is the best conference in the country, in my opinion, there's going to be a slip up along the way. But I think you can see that, for any team, maybe less so for Michigan State, obviously. But I think just with the Langford factor, that's about the time he's going to have to come back. and he might not even be back for that. It's on the road at West Lafayette or in West Lafayette. So yeah, that's my reasoning. I could sit here and say, yeah, Michigan State's going to win the conference because they're the best team in the conference.
Right. No, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but I think that if you look at their schedules, you can kind of work in and see why Michigan State would have maybe one extra slip up than Purdue would be. And this is why Painter's the coach of the year, and why I picked him as a whole is they have the most Big Ten titles for a reason. They don't have the most tournament success for almost the same exact reason. Is they always have a really, really high floor, but they don't necessarily have a really, really high ceiling. Michigan State teams have a high ceiling and a similar floor.
Yep, I hear you. So, all right, you got Purdue regular season champ, player of the year, Cassius Winston. Coach of the year is Matt Painter.
Yes, sir.
All right, give me a sec. Work just pinged me. I'm gonna edit this out. Fucking annoying, man. One sec. This is why we don't go live, right?
We're gonna do it live.
All right. Give me one sec. If you want to, like, I don't know, do whatever you want. I'm just seeing if
all good.
You can get me. Oh, I heard the little fucking Skype pop up noise too. Sometimes it does it, sometimes it doesn't. It's fucking annoying.
I didn't catch it, but
oh, you didn't?
Mm-mm. But you might be a little more in tune to listening for it than I am. So. Tragic day that I had my last Coors Light and I didn't re-up before the recording. So such an amateur move.
Be like that sometimes.
Would it be inappropriate to make myself a mixie for the second half of the show?
I'll do it, man. I ain't gonna stop you.
What do we got here? Everything is all over the fucking place. So I don't know where anything is at.
This guy's fucking killing me. All right, I'm going to go on mute for a sec. Hold on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it was taking so long.
Oh, I don't care. Literally, the whole next 3 days is just set aside for me moving shit from one place to another. In reality, it's like we're throwing all of our shit away. Like, I already have the 2 recliners out on the street.
Really?
Yeah, we're only using wow. The truck for one day, or our neighbor's truck for one day, to move the piano and the king bed over. So it's not like, it's not like there's a lot of shit to be done, you know. So
all right.
yeah, end of an era.
So,
oh shit! Forgot my drink. Cucumber, mint, and orange juice should be interesting.
Okay. Can you give me like 10, 15 minutes? I'm going to like end this broadcast and then we'll start like a new one and I'll send you a different link. Is that okay?
Yeah, whatever you want. No big.
All right. Thanks, Doc.
All right.